The Prime Minister's epic failure of statecraft. Labour's Chagos surrender has been wrong from the start. And instead of making excuses, the right thing to do would have been to tear up this dreadful treaty and commit to keeping Chagos British. The news that the ratification of this treaty is now done and dusted is a humiliation for the Prime Minister and this government. And let's be clear, this Labour surrender treaty is Labour's mess. And as the House knows, within days of coming to office, the Prime Minister's top foreign policy priority was to exceed the wishes of his left-wing lawyer friends and surrender the Chagos Island at an enormous cost to British taxpayers. He met the Mauritian Prime Minister, appointed Jonathan Powell to conclude negotiations, and rushed and blundered into this treaty. They inexplicably announced it to the world just before Mauritius went to an election. And then when the Mauritian government that they agreed to deal with got kicked out, the new Mauritian government, guess what, demanded more concessions from Britain. And Labour rolled over and got eaten for breakfast. They put one of our most important defence and security assets at risk. They compromised the special relationship with the United States. They ignored and betrayed the wishes of the Chagosian community. And they were prepared to hand over £35 billion of taxpayers' money to lease back a land that we own. And then they went ahead with the deal before receiving the critical exchange of notes from the United States. And having been to the United States myself recently, I'm not in the least surprised that the administration has stopped to stop this deal. They can see what we have been saying for a long while. And it's the Conservatives who have opposed this Labour deal at every turn. And while Labour has spectacularly failed to defend British sovereignty, and Reform have gone from suggesting that we sell the island to the US to suggesting that we give it to the Maldives, the Conservative Party has been effectively scrutinising and opposing this surrender every step of the way to make sure that we keep Chagos British and we protect our sovereignty and our taxpayers. It's Conservatives who've exposed the full £35 billion costs of this deal. It's Conservatives who've dismantled Labour's outrageous and offensive narrative that those who oppose the Chagos surrender are siding with British adversaries and instead brought forward the major security concerns about this deal and exposed the fact that Mauritius is deeply in partnership with Russia, China and Iran. It's Conservatives that have been pressing the government for months on its totally inadequate answers about why the anti-nuclear Pendalaba Treaty would apply to Diego Garcia. And its Conservatives have been supporting the Chagosians every step of the way and giving them a voice and speaking up for them. Our questions and debates in this House and in the other place have led Labour to account and forced them now into this position today. But while this surrender and this whole process now has been ripped up, I do want to ask the Minister some fundamental questions. The Mauritian government has announced that the UK delegation is going to Mauritius later this month. Will the Minister tell us who is going and now what is the purpose? What will they be negotiating? Is there a new timetable? What is actually going to happen? We also know that Mauritius has budgeted to receive the surrender payments from the British government. So can the Minister confirm that no payments will be made to Mauritius as a result of what he has announced today? And will the Labour government commit to spending the money they were planning to ship to Mauritius on boosting defence spending at this critical time, which is exactly what the British taxpayer wants, the purpose for which should now be clearly allocated to this fundamental resource? Can he confirm in no uncertain terms that for as long as the US opposes this deal, Labour will not seek in any way to reinstate this? And on the Chagosians, if the islands stay British, is it the government's intention to look at resettlement options? And will he rule out any new legislation coming forward next session, even if it isn't in the King's Speech, so that the surrender treaty cannot become operable? The only bill that the government should be taking forward now in the next session is my original bill to make sure that Chagos remains British.
Minister.
Well, Madam Deputy Speaker, I will start with a thanks to the Honourable Lady. She's rightly scrutinised many different aspects of this over many, many months, and I have come dutifully to answer many of those questions. I've met with her privately, and this has been scrutinised by many committees, and it was the right thing to do to update the House today on this development. And I'm glad that she acknowledges that point. Of course, it's not for government to simply choose easy paths, it's to choose the right path. And it's to choose the path that's in the interests of Britain and our national security and that of our allies. And fundamentally, at the heart of this, Madam Deputy Speaker, is a question. The opposition know that there is a huge challenge here. They knew that there was a problem, and that's why they started this process. And throughout this, through all the exchanges we've had, they have never been able to answer that simple question. And I cannot recall a time, Madam Deputy Speaker, when we have seen so much misinformation and, quite frankly, negligent disregard for the national interests and security of the British people. And it's regrettable that the official opposition, indeed the party opposite, to only see one of their members has turned up today, have been at the heart of this. And they will say, of course, oh, this is just politics and we, the government, should be thick-skinned. But quite frankly, the British public deserve better. Indeed, the national interest is what drives this government and our national security, as they well knew, which is why they started the process. So we've seen, frankly, ludicrous disinformation about the operations of the base, about the genuine threats it faced, about the security provisions of the treaty, which, of course, we strengthened, about the costs. No matter how often they give these false figures about the costs, it doesn't make them any more accurate. And, of course, about the views of Chagosians, which I accept are wide and varied, but they conveniently always ignore the views of significant numbers of Chagosian communities and groups who feel very differently about this treaty and who have supported it since the start, and indeed about the protection of the environment. And the fact is, Madam Deputy Speaker, the opposition know the reality. They operate in a state of convenient amnesia. They knew the jeopardy facing the base. They knew that they presided over 11 rounds of negotiations. They published it in ministerial statements, in records of meetings with the Mauritian Prime Minister, and they know too that the treaty signed by this government was born of their policy choices and their negotiation mandates. So, as ever, Madam Deputy Speaker, the opposition cannot run fast enough away from their record in government when it suits tiresome political politicking. The British people are not fooled. They can see the hypocrisy and they deserve better.